This is Dave, and I'm here with Ethan, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 166-inch.
On this episode, it's part one of our interview with the writer and director of Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, Eric Appel. Plus, John Bermuda Schwartz joins us to talk about his just-announced new book.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Well, Ethan, we are back, and wow, what a big news week last week was.
Jeez, you're right. And of all the weeks for us to take off, although all the news dropped after our episode would have already aired, but that's besides the point.
Well, before we get to the exciting news and our amazing guests this episode, we have to briefly talk about where we just came back from.
Yes, it was both of our first times ever in the great state of Minnesota.
Yeah, and not only did we visit the great state of Minnesota, we visited
the Mall of America.
Yes, we did visit the Mall of America, but we were super excited to finally go to
the conference room at the Ramada Inn.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that exciting. It was a weird conference room, though. But what I'm trying to say is we
ate at the Bubba Gump restaurant.
Oh, that's also correct. But I really want to mention the very exciting
brand new Dave and Ethan wooden nickels we had made.
Well, they are very exciting, but remember, it is also
your birthday weekend, Dave. I could never forget. From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, we wish you a very happy, belated birthday.
Wow, thank you everyone at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. I really appreciate that. And of course, you know, on my birthday weekend, we went to
not one, but two Weird Al concerts.
Oh, gosh darn it, Ethan. All I'm trying to say is we went to Darwin, Minnesota, and finally visited
the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota.
Minnesota. Well, it was pretty stinking majestic, but do not take our words for it. Take it from an unbiased source such as Discover Darwin.
This episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota beautiful, it's also pretty stinking majestic.
All right, Ethan, now that we actually went to Darwin, Minnesota, we can finally visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Oh boy, you're right, Dave. How could I have forgotten?
All righty, let's do it.
Shall I do the honors?
Please, Ethan. I would be honored if you did the honors.
Then I shall honorably. Okay. DISCOVERDARWINDOTBIZ.
Wait.
What?
You spelled out the word dot? You're just supposed to put a dot.
Oh, you're right. Okay, I'll start over. Delete. Okay. DISCOVERDARWIN.BIZ.
Nothing's happening?
I didn't push enter.
Well, what are you waiting for?
ENTER.
No, the button marked enter.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Wait, nothing is happening?
Did you type out enter?
No!
Did you add the www?
Oops, no, let me just... www.
Don't type out the word dot.
I know how the internet works!
All right, now hit enter.
Who made you the boss? Okay. Yeah,
Are you sure we actually went to Darwin, Minnesota?
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next expedition. Discover Darwin, more than just the twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to attempt to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
All right, let's move on to what's happening in Weird Al related news.
On Wednesday, July 27th, the big news broke that Weird, the Al Yankovic Story will be headed to the Roku Channel on Friday, November 4th.
And if for some reason you've been living under a rock for the past several months and Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 166-inch, is the first thing that you have chosen to listen to. Weird the Al Yankovic Story is the biopic starring Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al, as written and directed by this episode's guest, Eric Appel.
Along with the big announcement, the poster for the biopic was also released. So if you haven't seen it yet, head over to WeirdAl.com or Weird Al's social media and check it out for yourself.
And while you are there, be sure to check out that pretty stinking majestic teaser trailer.
Ooh, I hope you remember to ask Eric about that. There's one very quick shot in particular that's been getting a lot of buzz around here I'd love to hear all about.
And speaking of the new movie, fans who attended the July 22nd concert in Lincoln, Nebraska got a really special treat.
That's right, and without spoiling anything, we learned that Weird Al needed some additional audio for the movie, so he asked the audience to participate.
How pretty stinking majestic for everyone that was there.
And to think, Dave, we were at the very next show, so we only missed being in the movie by 1 day!
I am so very jealous of everyone who was there.
Me too! I would love to be in a Weird Al movie, or the trailer, or the teaser trailer, or even the credits! Sheesh!
Maybe someday.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. I really have high hopes for the next one. Let's hope he really does follow through on his promise to do a movie every 33 years.
In other news, John Bermuda Schwartz has announced his long-awaited second book, Lights, Camera, Accordion, eye-popping photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, 1981 through 2006, which will be released November 15th, 2022. And we have Bermuda right here to tell us all about it. Hey, Bermuda, how you doing?
Hey, guys. Oh, good to be here. I'm doing fine.
We are so thrilled to hear about Lights, Camera, Accordion, and you know, it's not just you went through and got colored pencils and colored these in. These are actual color photos this time?
These are real stinking color film, 35 millimeter Kodak and Agfa and other. Yeah, these are a bunch of my color film photos, and I shot film on Al. Well, that's all I had for a long time. But this covers from 1981, from the very first photo I shot of Al, through 2006, which is the very last film photo I shot of Al, and those are both in the book.
Wow!
And about 300 in between the two.
Oh, cool.
300 sounds like a lot more than the last book.
It's about 50% more.
Wow.
I think the Black and White and Weird All Over had like 203 photos, and this book's got like 301 or something, plus a couple of extra things that are in the introduction, and there's some extra photos that don't count in the 301, but those are in the chapters. So it's 50% more, and they've somehow managed to keep the price pretty close to the original. The Black and White and Weird All Over listed for $35. Lights, Camera, Accordion will be $40. Of course, Amazon and a bunch of other places will be discounting it.
Right.
So the new book is $40, and that is such a steal because it does have, like you said, 50% more photos. Besides the 300 color photos of Al and the band and other colleagues you've met, throughout the years from 1981 through 2006, it has a foreword by Drew Carey and kind words by Phillips and an afterword by Al. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, boy. Well, I'll tell you, it was a real treat getting Drew. I mean, Drew and Al are friends, of course. And Drew wrote a very funny foreword. And Emo wrote some very nice words. On the back of the first book, Dr. Demento had a couple of sentences, which was really cool and all that. Mm-hmm. And not that I don't love, Dr. Demento, and not that I wouldn't have liked Al to write the foreword again. It just seemed a little obvious to do that. And I wanted to go a little bit of a different direction on it, and there's a lot of great people that could say a lot of things about Al, and I was looking for that too. So Drew Carey was a really good fit. He wrote something very, very funny. I can't tell you what it is yet, but it's really good. And Emo's words were really, really good. Very, very. When Emo does his comedy, it's really, you really have to think about it, and sometimes, and people laugh a little bit, and then about 10 seconds later, it sinks in, and then you laugh some more. Well, he wrote sort of a cool thing like that, like you read it, and it's like, it's not gobbledygook, but you read it, and it just sort of, it takes a few seconds to hit you. It's like, wow, that's like really cool. That was really kind of profound, a very, very, very nice thing to say, which is very, very kind to him. And we got Al found out that Drew wrote the foreword, and he wanted to get in on it somehow, so he wrote an afterword referencing the forward a little bit, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But yeah, he did not get asked to write the forward again, and he had something to say about that. Anyway, and we put it in the book. So there you go.
Well, I don't want to be too spoilery here, but I am curious, do Drew Carey and Emo Phillips show up in the book?
They do. And you know what? They show up in the same place. How funny. I just realized that. They both show up in the chapter that has the Pentiums video.
Right.
And of course, Emo and Drew was in there. And unless you know, you might not recognize Emo.
With the short
but
haircut.
He's the kind of... Yeah, with the short hair and the glasses and... Yeah. And it almost doesn't look like him at all, but it's most certainly him. And so, yeah, they both, interesting, they both appear in the same place, like within a day of each other in that book.
How awesome.
Obviously, I guess there's going to be a chapter about It's All the Pentiums. I've got to imagine that several other music videos are probably covered in here. Can you give us just an overview of what this book covers? I mean, there's a lot that goes on between 1981 through 2006. What are some highlights?
A number of the videos are covered, and some of them are not. I mean, it just kind of depends. I mean, obviously, the first book covered Ricky, I Love Rocky Road, Eat It, Living with a Hernia. And there's a little bit of Ricky and I Love Rocky Road and Eat It in this book, alternate color photos. I was carrying around 2 cameras at the time.
Right.
And I just, I would take some pictures with the one, and then I would put the other one up to my eye and take pictures with that. So I have very similar, although obviously not exact, photos that are both black and white and color of the same kind of scenes. And I tried to avoid doing too much of that. Oh, here's the color version of that black and white shot. And no, I provide alternate color versions. But there were some videos where I didn't shoot color for Living with a Hernia, for example. So those black and white photos in the first book are the only ones that exist that I took. I'm not aware of anyone else that took pictures on set. We didn't have a set photographer back in those days, so because they just let me bring my camera down, shoot my film, and they were happy to go with that. And I was happy to do it. But I have and a lot of these photos honestly have been seen before. They have not been seen in this kind of quality. I mean, these were all taken from the negatives and nicely retouched, and they are crisp, and the density is beautiful on them, and the color is beautiful. And I mean, really, scanning prints in the past for the web was fine, but you couldn't make a book out of it. And I love the book that's in the Squeeze box set, but you know what? The photos that appear in there that now appear in my book, much better in my book. They're really, well, they're from the source. I mean, they're that good. So the photos, for example, from Bedrock Anthem video, which interestingly was a video that appeared in black and white. Well, I have color photos of that. So that's a pretty cool. Whereas Living with a Hernia was a video that appeared in color, and I have black and white photos. So but there's a number of videos, and there's a couple of photos from This Is the Life. There's a couple of photos from Headline News. Again, the photos range through 2006, and they don't even get into the 2006 tour because they literally get the book ends with my shots of the photo session for Straight Outta Linwood. The cover and some of the interior shots.
Oh, very cool.
So this is before that album was out or that tour happened or those videos were done. So it lets off, really it kind of leaves off at like 2003, 2004. And that's sort of, so for example, I think, I'm trying to think what was happening in that era. 2003, I have shots from the Poodle Hat cover photo session.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
In that fake subway car they had. and the other cool thing, now and also the book from start to finish is chapterized pretty much by album or era. So although the first chapter starts in 1981 and there wasn't an album yet in 1981, that's one of the exceptions where it starts a little before, but it goes through the first album. Second chapter starts with In 3D. Third chapter starts with Dare to Be Stupid, et cetera, and down the line through Straight Outta Linwood. But literally it cuts off at that photo shoot for the booklet, and that's the last film I ever shot on Al.
Wow.
At some later time, maybe other shots that I shot digitally could show up. And there was a lot of overlap with my digital shooting too. I started shooting digital like in mid-1997, I guess. But I knew the quality wasn't there to do much with. and I continue to use film for almost another 10 years because the quality of at least the digital cameras I was buying, really didn't rival film until much later. And at that point, I gladly let go of the film, embraced digital 100%. And, that's been, for a lot of reasons, it's a superior format. But there's a certain texture, there's a certain vibe. There were things that happened prior to the digital age that exist in this book, and I'm glad I shot those on film. I'm glad I was able to preserve those, and that I kept the film safe and dry and, in sleeves, and the proper kinds of sleeves. So nothing got stuck together. There was very little discoloration, and we were able to deal with the discoloration somewhat. As good as we could. Some of the film had yellowed, meaning I don't know what color it actually was, but by the time I had a positive of the image, it had a yellow cast throughout a lot of it. And I was able to, I converted it to a 4-color so I could deal with the yellow channel. And I was able to deal the yellow with that, get the yellow out, put it back to a 3-channel, red, green, blue, and restore. It didn't affect the color too badly, but it certainly looked better than just taking it straight off the negative without correcting it. So there are photos and I would say 90% of the film survived, and it was great. But 10% of it I had a little bit to deal with, and we made it work. We made it work very well, I think. But the quality on these is really, really good. And that's the difference. So there are a lot of photos that have been seen, but they haven't been seen like this.
I'm so excited about it. But the big question I have is, you only appear in the first book a couple times. Do pictures of you show up in this new book?
Yeah, there was no way to avoid that. And I explained, and you know what? There's, as I did with some of the pictures in the first book, the pictures of me were taken by Musical Mike, by Mike Kiefer.
Right.
And I know that
Very cool.
because he's the only guy who I would have trusted to hold my camera, and he's also the only guy who confessed that it was probably him. Everyone else denied it. So and furthermore, there are no pictures of he and I together. So that sort of tends to suggest that if there's a picture of me, he took it. There are many more pictures of me in this book, and with very few exceptions, I know who took all of them. I mean, I know who took these impossible photos of me on stage at Jonathan Swift's in Boston in 1984 or 83. I mean, I remember these people because I always had a picture of me with them at the end of the show on my roll of film.
Okay.
So they all got credit. They all got mentioned in the thank yous. Some of them have passed on. They got mentioned anyway. And then the only other exception was that when we were on tour, and there were a couple of people I would have trusted in the crew to take pictures of, band shots and stuff, and I pretty much know who they were, but I didn't want to omit anybody. So I did sort of a blanket thank you to all of the members of the crew who
cool.
toured with us from 83 through, and I think I said through 2004, because that was the last time we had actually been on the road for the photos that are in the book. But everyone who was involved in any way got a thank you. And so in those instances, and I think I said something like, thanks to the people who, took pictures of me because my arms were too short to hold the camera, something like that. But you know what? I'm glad they did. I mean, I wouldn't want to have just pictures of it, because there are other pictures in there that involve the guys, Al and the rest of the band that I'm in, and I wouldn't want to omit those just because I'm in them, because the picture is too good. And that's what I thought. No, I didn't mean it's a good picture of me. I mean, it's a good picture of the group, or it's a good picture of Al, or something. There's a good reason to have it in there, rather than to take it out just so I could claim, I took every photo in the book. It was more important to show the photos that came from my camera, and so that's why. So I do thank everybody for that, and and that's it. And I think it makes it a better book. I mean, there are certainly enough photos to do nothing but photos of Al, but there's more to Al than Al. There's more to his career than just him. In a lot of the fans' eyes. And we're a part of that. We're very happily a part of that. And we deserve to be in some pictures too. So,
well, Dave and I know that more than anyone. We're obviously on team seeing Bermuda and the rest of the band, so we're happy to hear that.
Well, yeah, like you guys. Yeah, that's
This past Monday, August 1st, Ethan and I were actively refreshing 1984publishing.com because you also, besides putting out, the standard version of this book, you put out a limited edition deluxe box set. So can you tell us about what went into that box set?
Whew. Yeah, this time with Black and White and Weird All Over, we did 250 box sets, and those sold out like in 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Anyway, those went very quickly, and so we discussed this time. We said, well, let's put out a few more. There's obviously enough demand. So they're doing. They did 350 boxes, and in the box there are a dozen 9x12 prints, as there were in the Black and White book, but these, of course, are color prints selected from the book. There's a set of, I think, 5 or 6 postcards, 5x7 postcards, which are pretty cool. And should you want to mail them, they actually have the address lines and stuff on the back and the little square to put the stamp.
Cool.
It's like a real postcard.
Wow.
There's a cool, like a film strip, a 35 millimeter film strip, and they've laminated it so it doesn't get beat up. But it's an actual 35 millimeter film strip with, I think it's like 8 frames from the Bob video, not the video, but from the video shoot, pictures that I took. And there's some pictures in that strip that actually don't appear in the book.
Oh, cool.
And that serves as a bookmark, but it's also kind of a cool little thing to have. So already there's like a couple of extra things that didn't appear in the Black and White and Weird All Over box set. There's also, we wanted to include some other like really cool things from way back, something that would look nice on a sheet. So what we did was I had a copy of the set list, Al's handwritten set list from that show we opened for Missing Persons, April 9th, 1982. It's got some, and on the back of the reproduction of that sheet, it's got a couple of paragraphs I wrote, like I had to explain, it says food medley and some other thing, the polka medley. And, again, this was literally, well, this was before we recorded any polka medleys, but this was just as we were finishing recording the first album, and it was still a year from coming out. So, to see something like food medley at the time, and polka medley at the time really was a different, there was no polka medley to compare it to. So I had to explain it and what was in the polka medley, and what was in it was, and it was called Polkas on 45, but not the Polkas on 45 that was on in 3D. Oh. This was a couple of years, this was an older polka medley, and this was made up of, again, we were just an LA group, kind of, and this was made up of like new wave songs that were on K-Rock radio, and that Al listened to and liked, and he was being played on K-Rock, and that he thought would appeal to the people that came to see us. They would be familiar with some of these songs, but it would be like really cool, like putting them together in a polka medley. And off the top of my head, I don't remember what was in there, but just some very odd stuff. It did actually start with, I think it opened with Jocko Homo by Devo.
Oh, cool.
Which is the only thing that actually made it to the real Polkas on 45 a couple years later. Everything else changed. Everything else was actually a lot of classic rock, as I recall, in that one. But very interesting. But I describe all those songs and who did them, should anyone care to look it up. I told them what was in the food medley at the time. Again, some things that never were really recorded, that just appeared, as live things, which we did for a while, actually, on tour. We would play stuff in the shows that didn't appear on records, things that Al had written, maybe a verse and a chorus to, and that was all it needed, and it would end up in a medley.
Yeah.
And I also explain what the big brouhaha was about being kind of like booed a lot at that show. And there's another piece that's in there as well, in addition to that set list. There's a copy of the front page of our 1983 tour itinerary, the first tour we did, and it was with Dr. Demento. And I went through and I wrote a little piece about that tour, about those dates on the back of that sheet as well. And in doing so, I thought, I wonder, this is almost 40 years ago, it's 39 years ago. I wonder how many of these places are still around, and hosting music. And like half of them were.
Wow.
Surprisingly.
Cool.
Now the bottom line in New York City is gone, and some of them are gone, but I think the Park West in Chicago is still hosting music. Toad's Place in New Haven is still open. I was really surprised. I think out of a dozen or whatever it was, I think 5 or 6 of them are still in business. There was in looking at that, there was something I had forgotten, that Dr. Demento came into town earlier and did I guess, was on David Letterman before the tour even started. So he's listed on there.
Wow.
But it's very interesting, and it's on. Jay Levy was Al's manager at the time, and he's still Al's manager, but he was his manager then. He was also the tour manager on that tour. He
Wow.
took us out, and he was Dr. Demento's manager as well. So, the six of us, he, Dr. Demento, and Al, and the three of us, me, Jim, and Steve, went out on that first tour. So the itinerary was printed on Jay's letterhead. His company, his management was called J. Levy Associates. And so it's printed, and it's kind of a buff-colored sheet, which I think they printed it on a buff-color sheet with a little orange swatch under the name. And, it looks very much like the original looks. And it's got those dates on there. It's got the, if there was any radio station promotion, it's got that listed on there. I mean, it's just a very cool piece,
That's
from
awesome.
the day. So all these, very cool little extra things in this box set, which is, again, 50% more photos, extra goodies. The cover is different. Very, very fun cover, and the photo doesn't appear in the book. It just appears on the box set cover. And it's Al at the board, like kind of playing with the mixing board in the studio during the Ricky session.
Oh, cool.
And it was just a
So
picture
cool.
that I took. And it's been seen, but now it's a book cover taken from the negative, and it's really, really cool. I'm very glad. And it's one of those pictures, his face and kind of some of the board and his hand tweaking the knobs on the front cover. And then you look at the back cover and it wraps around, and you can see basically the backside of Al. I mean, you can see his back. And, so if you were to open up the book and see the back cover and the front cover together, you would see one big photo.
That's so fun.
So that's kind of a cool thing. And the box set was only $4 more than the one from Black and White Weird All Over. With all of this extra stuff in it, and it's only $4 more. I don't know, how they do it, but oh, that's right. They took it out of my cut. That's right. No, it's very, very cool. This is really, it's all about the fans, and it was just not about gouging them. It's like, well, 50% more photos, let's charge 50% more for the book. No, it's not about that. We want everyone to buy this and and to enjoy it and to get a little bit more for their money this time around. And it's honestly, at this point, I have not seen a physical book, but I know it's going to look and feel great, and I know the pictures are just going to pop off the page. And we sort of say that in the subtitle. It says eye-popping photographs, so I'm really counting on them. I'm counting on some ocular damage from some of the fans. I expect some lawsuits. So, I was looking at your book and my eyes popped out. Oh my God! Nice book though. Here's a subpoena. Yeah.
Well, it's really incredible. Lights, Camera, Accordion. You can pre-order it now. You can head over to 1984publishing.com. You can pre-order it on Amazon.com. And November 15th just can't come fast enough. I'm so excited for this book.
Thanks so much for all that pretty stinking majestic information about the brand new book, Lights, Camera, Accordion, Eye-Popping Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, 1981 through 2006.
Now, last we saw, amazingly, there were still a few deluxe box sets available for pre-order on 1984publishing.com.
So do not wait. These are limited and sure to be pretty stinking majestic and highly collectible. So go get yours right now.
And, incredibly, it will ship internationally. Dave, I told you we could have moved to Chilliwack without worrying about this deluxe book.
Well, another missed opportunity on our part. And just a reminder, this coming Friday, August 5th, Weird Al voices the character of Vic Vanko and sings a new song called Scarif Beach Party in Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation on Disney+.
We are so excited to see this and hear the new song.
Also, Ethan, I am so excited to hear all about your Weird Al-related adventures in the Lego store at the Mall of America.
Well, Dave, you can hear all about it in our ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episode 28 centimeter. And if you forgot about our visit to the biggest ball of 20 Minnesota and the rest of Darwin, Minnesota, you can check that out on ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episode 27 centimeter.
Well, that's good to know, but what if I also forgot about going to see Weird Al in Minneapolis on my birthday as well?
Well, Dave, that's ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episode 29 centimeter.
All right, but how am I supposed to listen to them?
Well, first you need to become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/2000inch. Then you need to wait for our intern Frank to post them.
That all sounds wonderful, but what if I'm, frugal?
Well, Dave, your frugality means you'll have to wait even longer to hear those pretty stinking majestic episodes.
Ooh, I'm not liking that even longer thing. Well, I think I'm going to sign up for Patreon today just to be safe.
Sounds like a plan. While you're there, you can currently listen through episode 26 centimeter. Plus, you can watch a video I shot of the show, which was requested by a member of the band.
And coming up this weekend, we hope to add even more ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episodes to our list, as this Friday, August 5th, Ethan will be attending the concert at Indian Ranch in Webster, Massachusetts.
That's right, Dave. Then I join back up with you and Jackie, and we head to Amish country to see the 2 sold-out shows at the American Music Theater in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Oh, Ethan, have you ever been to the American Music Theater?
No, I've never been to Lancaster, I don't think.
Ooh, well, the last few times I was there, Weird Al played Amish Paradise, so I'm really hoping he does it again so you can experience hearing Amish Paradise in the heart of Amish country. It is one of those experiences that should be on any Weird Al fan's checklist, like hearing Smells Like Nirvana in Seattle or The Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota.
Or hardware store at my local Home Depot.
Exactly! Well, if you'll be at any of the shows this weekend, please stop by and say hello. We would love to give you some stickers and even give you one of our brand new shiny wooden nickels.
Well, those wooden nickels aren't quite as shiny as the foil at Burrito! This episode is brought to you in part by vegan burrito restaurant Burrito in Troy, New York, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in a quesadilla Burrito, and Wizard Burger in Albany, New York. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito your Burrito, or hop on over to Wizard Burger for mouth-watering, loaded, dare I say, beefy vegan burgers. From Troy to Albany to Uranus, Burrito, and Wizard Burger feed the hunger with out-of-this-world, plant-based, real food, always vegan style. Visit burritosquare.com and wizardburger.com to order ahead. All right, let's move on to this episode's interview.
Well, Ethan and I are very excited for so many reasons to talk to our guest this episode. He recently co-wrote and directed the film Weird the Al Yankovic Story, starring Daniel Radcliffe, coming this November 4th to the Roku Channel. But before that, he's also the person behind the viral 2010 Funny or Die trailer by the same name, starring Aaron Paul, and he's a great friend of the podcast, and it is our extreme honor to welcome Eric Appel to the podcast. Hey, Eric, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I've listened to so many episodes of this. I'm excited to finally get to talk to you guys.
Wow, it's so exciting.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to have you here, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we even talk about the film with Daniel Radcliffe, there's so much to cover with the trailer, but also your career. So I don't know where we should start. Maybe I assume you're a Weird Al fan. Is that accurate?
Oh my God. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I've been a Weird Al fan for as long as I can remember. I mean, I think my mom is the one that showed me the Eat It video. I mean, probably the year that it came out.
Wow.
And yeah, I've been a fan ever since. Whenever Al had a video that came out on MTV, I was a little too young to buy albums then, because I was born in 1980. But I was just I loved every single video that came out. I think I was in maybe second grade when Fat came out, which was huge. All the kids in my class were talking about it. I made my grandpa took me to go see UHF opening weekend in 1989.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, which was my all-time favorite movie when I saw it. It just totally blew me away. And the first album that I bought on cassette tape was Off the Deep End. That was the first album that I really became obsessed with. I think maybe I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
At the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was, I had every single word to every song memorized and, just was constantly making all my friends listen to Weird Al, and I was just like very Weird Al obsessed. It's funny, when our movie got announced, I got some Instagram direct messages from people that I grew up with, people that I went to elementary school with, and they were like, "Oh my God, could you imagine telling 6th grade you that you're going to make this movie with Weird Al?"
Oh man, I can't even imagine that. That's just, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I was also obsessed with Al's MTV takeovers. Al TV. I want to say I was like homesick or something for one of them, and just like spent 24 hours watching Al TV, and I taped them on VHS tapes, and I would like rewatch them, and
oh yeah.
yeah, I was a kid that I used to like tape with a cassette tape. I used to like record the TV and just like try to memorize the things people were saying. I used to do it with Saturday Night Live too.
Oh wow!
Just like,
oh wow,
yeah, like record sketches and like listen back to them.
So you were Weird Al fan. You're a SNL fan at a young age. When did you actually start working on comedy? When did you do comedy yourself?
Yeah, so growing up, my parents had a video camera when I was really young, and I would make shorts and little films in the woods with my friends. Really terrible little movies that I would force people to watch. And I would also make movies by myself. I would make little films by myself with my action figures and like walk them around, almost like a third person video game. Like I'd hold the action figure in the foreground of the shot, and like make little movies where like my like Ninja Turtles were like trying to capture my cat. Like stupid little movies like that. But when I was in college, I went to school. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh for animation. I was also obsessed with Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead, and wanted to be an animator for a bit there. But when I got to college, I kind of realized that work wasn't for me. Like I like working in groups, and I like working with people, and being an animator, you're just kind of it's a lonely job where you're just kind of slaving over a computer or drawing board all day long, and just the work can be a little monotonous for someone with a brain that functions like mine. So I was dating a girl at the time who was a Pittsburgh local, and she told me about this show called Friday Night Improv, which was this improv comedy show, sort of like short form improv, Whose Line Is It Anyway type stuff. And it was at the University of Pittsburgh. It was in the basement of the Cathedral of Learning every Friday night. And the way that the show worked was anyone in the audience could raise their hand to like play these improv games.
Wow.
And suddenly you're like up on stage in front of, a couple hundred college kids.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And I kind of dove right into that. I mean, I was very nervous and very terrible at doing improv, but I would go every week, mostly watch, sometimes get up. And, I met a group of like-minded friends. We formed our own little improv group on the side. And my focus started to shift from, what I was studying in school to just doing comedy with people and doing improv with people and making up funny stuff. And, we all kind of read the same comic books and watched the same movies. And after I graduated school, I had heard about the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York City, which this theater was just sort of starting to take off. And after school, I moved to New York and started doing improv. I took improv classes at UCB, and within the next 3 years, I was performing weekly on like a house improv team. And some of the people that like I came up with in my classes, Ellie Kemper, Zach Woods, Ben Schwartz,
Wow.
Adam Pally. the teachers were, Rob Riggle and Paul Scheer and all these, Rob Corddry and Ed Helms was performing there at the time. And Amy Poehler had like just got on Saturday Night Live. So I was in this like amazing incubator for comedic minds. And that's sort of where everything started for me. Like do you remember a show called The Andy Milonakis Show? It was on MTV.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so there was this Andy Milonakis and I met in level 1 improv class. We were in like an improv practice group together that was put together by this guy, Mark Lee, who was the organ player for the New York Knicks. Randomly.
Okay.
In the early days at the UCB Theater, a lot of random folks came through and took classes and got really into it. And, so we were in this improv group together, and then me and Andy and my friend Brian Getz, who was a high school friend of mine who was interning at Late Night with Conan O'Brien at the time, we all got an apartment together in Queens. And then Andy was making these internet videos, and this is pre-YouTube. He was, I can't remember where he was putting them on. There's a writer, Brian Lynch. He wrote like the Secret Lives of Pets movies and Minions. He was, he had a online comic called Angry Naked Pat. And there was there was like a forum for that Andy would like post videos to, and it was all sort of like, it was on the fringes of like the Kevin Smith online world.
Okay.
Anyway, Andy was posting all these videos. He got discovered by Jimmy Kimmel, randomly saw a video and then flew Andy out to like be on Jimmy Kimmel Live, which was like such a huge deal, and then started flying him around the country to do like remote bits on the show. Like he would go to the NBA All-Star game and do like man on the street interview type stuff. And eventually Andy called me one day, and he was like out in Los Angeles, and he said, Jimmy Kimmel wants me to stay here and like wants to develop a show with me. So he like helped me get an apartment, and so I'll pay you for the next 2 months rent, but like my dad's going to come like pick all my stuff up. And I'm like, guess I'm moving to LA. I'm like, wow. All right. Wow. This is how it happens, I guess. I don't know. Because I mean, I grew up in upstate New York. I have no one in my family is like in the film business. It just felt like such a foreign, weird, unattainable thing. I never in a million years thought that I would be doing what I do now when I was a kid. I mean, I loved movies, and of course I would have loved to direct and write. But it just seemed like such an unattainable goal that I didn't even bother. I kind of fell into the position that I was in. But anyway, so Andy moved out. He developed this MTV show. They came back to New York, shot a pilot for it. MTV picked it up. And I was like, if you're, are you looking for Andy and I would, used to write sketches together and stuff at UCB. So I asked him if I could, can I write for your show? And he's like, well, maybe. You have to like submit a packet. And I'm like, I don't know how any of this works. Right. So he sent me like a writing sample from one of the other writers that had been hired, and like sort of the, a list of the different types of bits that you'd have to write. You'd have to write like 3 pages of like sketch ideas and man on the street ideas for Andy to do. And anyway, I did a packet, and I got brought onto the show as a consultant writer. So it's like, we'll pay you to come in maybe a couple days a week and like pitch ideas. But one of the main writers, Dan Mintz, who's like on Bob's Burgers and everything. Yeah. Dan Mintz, who's like a wildly popular comedian and writer now. Yeah. He was a writer on the show, and he was leaving to go write for Louis C.K.'s HBO show, Lucky Louie. And I got bumped up to like full-time full-time staff writer.
Wow.
And yeah, so I did that show for a few seasons.
Is that where you met Jonah Ray?
Yes. Okay. On season 2 of the Andy Milonakis show, Jonah Ray was the writer's assistant. So yeah, that's where I met Jonah. And then after the season ended, I went out to LA to visit. I had never been to the West Coast before. And I was thinking about maybe relocating and moving there because there was more job opportunities. So I stayed on Jonah Ray's couch when I came to LA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And learned very quickly that Jonah was such like a man about town who like everyone knew. Like he's such a social butterfly. Like everyone knew Jonah Ray. So I showed up and I didn't know that I was like staying at the, sleeping on the couch of like the most well-known man in California. I just like met so many people and like, we probably went and saw a band or two and went to some weird stand-up shows. And he took me to this place called Sunken City in San Pedro, which is like this big stretch of road that like sunk down into the ocean during like a landslide. Yeah, I had a great time hanging with him, and we remained friends through the years, and worked together on some other stuff. But yeah, that's where I met Jonah.
That's amazing.
Who would eventually be in the in the trailer for the movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so after the Andy Milonakis show, it was produced by Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy's brother John Kimmel ran the show. They were also doing another season of Crank Yankers. It was moving from Comedy Central to MTV2, and they knew that I wanted to move to LA, so they offered me a job writing for Crank Yankers because it would dovetail right into the third season of the Andy Milonakis show, which was also which was relocating to LA. So I got to move to Los Angeles with like 6 months of solid work in front of me, which was great.
Oh, that's nice.
It, allowed me to get an apartment, and I wasn't making that much money on these
Right.
MTV2 shows, but it got it was enough to get me a small apartment and sort of get me on my feet.
But I want to ask you about Crank Yankers while we're here in the conversation, because
Sure.
that was a show that absolutely, was one of my all-time favorites when I was a kid growing up. Like, Crank Yankers was one of my like big comedy influence shows, and I'm really curious how that process worked with. How do you write for that? Or, what is the process of actually creating that show?
So it was, it was so incredibly fun. The writer's room, there was maybe 5 of us in a little room. And we would just spend all day coming up with prank call concepts. And we had on our desks phone books from like different states, and we were encouraged to like make prank calls and try our ideas out. So
Wow.
Imagine like getting to go to work and like make prank phone calls. Like that's almost as cool as telling 6th grade me that you'd work with Weird Al someday. It's like you're also gonna make prank phone calls for your job. So yeah, we would come up and oftentimes we would be told like what comedians we would be recording with. So we would tailor the ideas to them or their characters that were already established on the show.
Okay.
And we would just spend all day like writing dozens of ideas. Those would get whittled down. Those would get whittled down to like the best of, and then we would get assigned. Here's what this prank calls. This guy's going to call a tattoo shop, and he's going to ask for a crazy tattoo, and we would basically have to write up a bunch of options for the comedian, depending on like what direction the call may go in. So
Okay.
when the comedian making the call would eventually, when we'd get into the recording studio to do that, they would have, whichever call they decided to make, they would have all these different options for like directions to take the call in front of them, sample lines, things they could say, funny just areas to bring it in, and and in the room, and the writers were also in the room with the comedian when they were making the call, and we had little dry erase boards on our laps. And we were all wearing headphones and listening to the calls that's happening, and we would like quickly jot down ideas, and so like the call would be going really good, and then everyone's just furiously writing and like holding up these little dry erase boards, and the comedian that's on the call is like trying to read them all while still having the conversation,
right.
And they're like, then they point to the one they want, and then we all crane our necks and look at it, and we're like, okay, that's where he's taking it. Let's, and we're just trying to, yeah. And it was great. Like my improv background really helped that, just like seeing an idea start to blossom and expanding on it, and seeing where we could take it, and just that like the free exploration that I sort of learned, in all my improv training. But it was sometimes it was so hard not to ruin the call by laughing. I remember we did one. There was one call we did with Robert Smigel. Smigel came in and he played this old Israeli guy calling a travel agency, and it was the simplest. Sometimes the simplest concepts are the most funny. Oftentimes,
yeah.
And the bit that his character did was just that he would do these long pauses while he was talking, where he would just go, like in the middle of his sentence, like I need to fly to Tel Aviv, and like the longer I almost can't even talk about it. The longer the call would go, the longer those is would get. And it was, it was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Being in the room for it, and the longer these things would go on, we had. You looked around and you saw writers with like their shirts were pulled up over their faces, and they were covering. One of the writers I looked over, he had his shirt over his face and he was covering his ears and shaking. like being in that room, I remember it was like we were actively trying to not hear what was happening because it was too funny. We're like, this is going to be ruined.
That's crazy.
But yeah, that's basically and that's like phase one of that show, is that process for making all those calls. And then there's like then they go into like filming the puppets, which is a whole other thing. Then your job turns into writing puppet action and funny things for the puppets to do and funny posters to be on the walls and like, all of those
the billboards,
the billboards and there was jokes in the credits. There was it was just so joke heavy that it was just spending just all day writing like visual gags. And there's things that are like on both sides of the call when they do it with the puppets. There's funny things that are happening in the background,
right?
And you're just writing all that stuff. And then you get to watch all these amazing puppeteers film it. All these people that work on like Sesame Street and the Muppets and stuff, cutting loose and doing like more TVMA
right
puppeteering. But yeah, it was a great experience.
As a writer on the show, do you did you end up with any of the puppets? Did you get any kind of stuff from the show like that?
No, I didn't end up with any. That was like my first job in Los Angeles. Like I was so low on the totem pole. I didn't get to take anything. I didn't get a puppet. Writers that were there for multiple years like got puppets made of them that ended up on the show, and
wow.
then
cool.
maybe they would get to take home at the end of it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then after that, after Crank Yankers, I wrote for Human Giant, which was a sketch show with Paul Scheer and Rob Hubel and Aziz Ansari. So I wrote for season 2 of that show, which was great because it was a lot of old, friends from UCB, and also I got to write with like other writers that I admired. John Glazer, who I was like a huge fan of from, he wrote for Late Night with Conan O'Brien for years and, did all these sketches on that show. I got to write with him and Leo Allen and Andy Blitz and I think Brian Posehn came in. They split the writing between Los Angeles and New York. So when they were writing in New York, all the guest writers that would come on and consult were like, people from the world of like the late night shows in New York, and in LA it was like people from the Mr. Show world, which was awesome too. Other things that all things that I was huge fans of, and Human Giant is what got me in the door at Funny or Die.
Okay.
So I finished up writing for Human Giant, and this guy Owen Burke, who was a UCB guy from back in the day and was in an improv group with Hubel and Scheer. He was a executive at Gary Sanchez Productions, which is Will Ferrell and Adam McKay's production company. At the time, Funny or Die had only been around for maybe just about a year. It was a very experimental site at first. They had just hired like a new CEO and decided that they wanted to start, really expanding the site. So they hired me to come on as the senior writer. Owen had, seen my Human Giant stuff, and obviously he knew me from UCB, and he told Scheer and Hubel that he was, that they were looking for someone to sort of come be like just a writer with a little bit more TV experience to come in and work at Funny or Die. So yeah, I got hired as a senior writer, and when I got there, I didn't know what senior writer meant. I thought it was going to kind of be like a TV show, and I'd be like running a writer's room. But it was that working there, it was such an amazing place. It was very, very loose, very free. You can kind of just do whatever you want. It wasn't like a writer's room where everyone sat around and pitched on the same idea. Everyone just kind of worked independently on their own stuff. We were all together so we could ask each other's opinions, or like, hey, do you have any jokes you could add to this? Or what do you think of this? But it was very independent. Everyone, worked on their own projects. And I used that as an opportunity to start teaching myself how to direct and directing my own videos that I would write. So I bought some cinematography books, and just to like learn the rules. Going to school for anime, I was already a very visual thinker, and going to school for animation, I knew how to storyboard, and I knew editing, and I knew how things were put together. So yeah, I just sort of picked up a camera and started figuring out how to do it on my own, figuring out how to light things, how sound worked, all that. Just, it was very, very DIY. We were such a small ragtag group of people. There was a couple of folks there that sort of worked in that department that could help you out. But everybody wore many hats. Like the editor would also film things, and there was another editor that did like VFX stuff a little bit, and could help with lighting. And over the next couple of years, I just started, my stuff got better and better, and I started getting the opportunity to not just make movies, or not just make sketches with friends of mine, who like some of them have now become famous,
right?
But they weren't at the time. But I got to start working with like the celebrity talent. I think the first big celebrity video I did that hit was this like Lindsay Lohan. I did this video with Lindsay Lohan where, and it was like during her, it was during like a real tough meltdown time for her where she was like on the cover of every magazine for her like drinking and drug problems and all that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
she wanted to do something that sort of, I don't know, not poked fun at it, but sort of showed a bit of self-awareness.
Yeah.
So we pitched her an idea to do this Match.com commercial where she's like talking about her like, here's what I'm looking for, like her dating profile or something. And it was like, and in within this framework, it looked like a commercial for Match.com. It had like the same music behind it and everything. And, you know, it's sort of her doing her version of, you know, I like long walks on the beach, but, you know, she's saying like, I like crashing my car on the Pacific Coast Highway. Like, it's like all that kind of stuff. And so we shot it. I shot it with her, and I edited it myself like that night, and we put it out the following day, and it got like 5 million views online.
Yeah, wow.
And all of a sudden, I was like having to talk to this publicist. They're like, "All right, Access Hollywood wants to come talk to you, the director of this video," and I'm having to do all these interviews where like the entertainment media is clearly trying to get me to throw Lindsay Lohan under the bus and talk about like, you know, they're like, so was she late? Did she have her lines memorized? It was like that kind of stuff. Was she drunk? You know, did she smell like booze? And yeah, so my job was to just kind of go out there and say, no, we had so much fun doing it, which is true.
Yeah,
we did. We had a great time. She was lovely. But yeah, after that, I started getting to do, you know, more high profile celebrity videos. You know, and then I got into making these fake movie trailers, which is really where I feel like I shined the most for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there is one movie trailer we do want to ask you about, but before we get there, I wanted to ask about, you did American Contestant with Bob Odenkirk, and Dave and I are big Bob Odenkirk fans, so I'd love to just hear about that process.
Well, we need to stop the interview right there.
Oh, man! I was hoping we'd talk to Eric about the upcoming movie, Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, starring Daniel Radcliffe, and available starting November 4th on the Roku Channel.
Well, hopefully we ask him about it on the next episode.
Oh, sounds like we've got a message on the 347 Spatula Hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Ooh, I bet it's our good friend Jeff Nucera calling in and finally going to give his review of the Weird Al pinball machine.
Dave and Ethan, hi, it's Jeff. I'm just, I know I owe you guys a review of the Weird Al pinball machine, but if you can believe it, I'm still stuck in traffic on my way there. LA is just a nightmare. Anyway, wanted to call and wish Dave Rossi a very, very happy birthday. Hope you guys are enjoying yourselves at the Twine Ball. I was hoping to make it out there and sort of surprise you guys, but again, just a ton of traffic here in LA. Bye-bye.
Oh, how sweet, Jeff. Well, thank you very much for the birthday wishes. But you know what gift I would really love? I'd really love if you could finally send us that review of the Weird Al pinball machine.
Dave, that's so insensitive. Jeff's been stuck in traffic all this time, and all you care about is his review of some pinball machine. Oh, Jeff, thank you so much for the wonderful call. Well, sounds like we got yet another spatula voicemail.
Hey there, Dave and Ethan. It's your old pal Chris, the cartoon-loving geek from Canada here. Well, I can tell by the old collectible Hooded Avenger clock on the wall that you guys asked me to take care of for you while you're out busy seeing Al's Vanity Tour concerts that once again it's time for Dave's birthday. Happy birthday, Dave, old buddy. Say, listen, you remember how I told you last time that I ordered something special from you online? Well, don't ask me how, but it turns out your item suffered a fate similar to Ethan's gift. Yeah, I got an email saying that the plane carrying your gift crashed into the Pacific Ocean. and is now most likely a chew toy for a shark. And yep, it too was the last one in stock. Seriously, why do these things always have to happen to me? Oh well, don't worry. I kinda had a weird feeling that this sort of thing might happen again. So, I took the liberty of drawing your birthday gift too. So you can kinda get a rough idea what it would have looked like when it arrived on your doorstep. Yeah, I know it's not the same thing. But, much like Ethan's gift, I want you to know that I meant well. And I still hope that you like it. You know what, I'm thinking maybe next year I'll play it safe and just get you guys a couple of gift certificates to the Rocky Road manufacturing plant in Albuquerque. Actually, I hear they have a really nice museum exhibit on the history of ice cream containers. Well, anyways, that being said, Dave, you have yourself a happy birthday. Dave and Ethan, enjoy those concerts, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and Frank, if you're listening in the background there, no, you're still not getting a birthday gift from me. And I don't care if you've opened up your very own sanctuary for rare albino frog boys. That does not excuse you from the fact that you went and bought yourself a Blu-ray DVD combo pack of Joe Dirt. I mean, really, Frank? Of all the movies you could have picked at a Walmart, you picked that one? I'm sorry, I can't even look at you anymore, man. God.
Wow, Chris, thank you for the amazing birthday message. But what are the chances that my birthday gift would suffer the same cruel fate as Ethan's?
And Joe Dirt on Blu-ray combo pack? Really, Frank? Really?
Ah, you disgust me, Frank. Well, Chris, this drawing sure makes up for the unfortunate demise of my actual physical birthday gift. Oh, I absolutely love this drawing. My very own super ultra mega hyper tattoo applicator series XL. Aw, Chris, you shouldn't have.
What a great drawing. It's very futuristic. It's got a drawing of Boba Fett, and it's got a screwdriver and needles. Oh, Dave, we should totally post this over on group.2000inch.com so everyone can see it.
And Chris, it's almost like you were there when I was getting my Weird Al tattoos. This machine looks almost exactly like the one that my tattoo artist uses.
This is a special Hamster Alert to the Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast broadcast alert system, sponsored by Jack Bateman.
To care for a hamster is to be one with the hamster.
Oh no, is this another hamster tip?
Of course! If you find yourself in possession of a hamster, you must think like a hamster. Be a hamster.
And how do you propose you do this?
Well, I'm not proposing you dress like a hamster and stuff nuts and seeds in your mouth, because I assume someone with a hamster has already taken those steps.
Obviously.
What I am proposing is to truly understand the hamster. You must understand what they are all about.
I think I know what you mean. Like, where did the name hamster even come from?
Yes, that is a great question. This will help you take care of them.
You don't know what the answer is, do you?
No, I let's see, give me a yes. Hamster comes from the German word hamstern.
So they just dropped the N?
Yep.
That is all for this week's special Hamster Alert via the Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast broadcast alert system.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast is brought to you absolutely positively free thanks to our incredible sponsors Burrito, Discover Darwin, Jackson Scoggins, and Jack Bateman.
Our podcast is also supported by everyone else in our Patreon family, with special thanks to our amazing close personal friend level Patreon supporters, Adriana, Allison, Blair, Matthew, Mike, Rim Gems, Jared and Rocky, Javier, Nancy, NES Josh 64, Gus and Alicia, Jake, UH Jeff, Kenneth, Scott, Zeb, and also thanks to Tom Dog and everyone else in our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family.
If you enjoy our family-friendly, wonderful, wild, and wacky Weird Al podcast, please consider supporting us over at patreon.com/2000inch. There are really, really awesome benefits like getting your name on the podcast, your very own private RSS feed with access to all of our ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episodes, and access to secret episodes. And now would be a really, really good time to join if you have not already, because you will be the very first to hear those unfortunate return of the ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised Vanity Tour concert review bonus episodes.
And don't forget to check out our official merchandise over at shop.2000inch.com. Now, we all know the unfortunate return of the ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised vanity tour is well underway, so what better time to order the gift of Dave and Ethan than right now? You could even get a Discover Darwin shirt for your hamster.
Well, we love hearing from our listeners and other Weird Al fans, so join our Facebook community and post about Weird Al by visiting group.2000inch.com, as well as our Discord server for even more riveting Weird Al-related conversations. You can find both of those linked over on our website, plus we also love it when we receive voicemail via our official patent-pending 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline. That number is 347-SPATULA. Give it a call, and you might even hear your message in a future episode.
Be sure to visit WeirdAlPodcast.com or 2000inch.com for everything about our podcast, including incredible past episodes and guests. And while you're there, click on ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episodes to follow along with our adventures on tour. Or click on Black and White and Weird All Over bonus episodes for our special bonus episode book series where author John Bermuda Schwartz walks us through his first book, page by page and picture by picture.
Keep up on new episodes, podcast news, and events by following at 2000inch on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you for subscribing and leaving reviews on your favorite podcast app. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you are the very first to hear any breaking headline news. And make sure you stay subscribed because not only does it help the podcast, it moistens the crackers that which you are attempting to consume.
Thank you once again to this episode's guest, Eric Appel, as well as John Bermuda Schwartz for his special appearance. We also want to thank UH Jeff Nucera, Chris Sear, the cartoon-loving geek from Canada, Zeb Lemke, 1984 Publishing, and Sylvia. Thank you to the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West for our incredible podcast theme song, and thank you to Weird Al Yankovic, as this podcast probably would not exist without him. And a big thanks to all of you, our loyal listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who makes our podcast possible.
Thank you for choosing Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, and until next time, take some wooden nickels, and remember to gill and chill.
Be sure to tune in to the next episode so you can hear part 2 of our pretty stinking majestic interview with the amazing director and writer Eric Appel.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 166-inch.
Seriously, please take a wooden nickel.